Hare Krishna, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam discussion on Saturday evenings. And let's get started with first with Mangalacharan prayers, then the invocation prayers for Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we will have discussion on the yet another wonderful topic. So let's get started with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, now let's recite our invocation prayers for the Srimad Bhagavatam. So let me share my slides. Okay, hopefully you can see. Okay, so this is our slide which is showing Sri Sukadev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, and all the sages. And also then these are the sages of Naimisharanya with Suta Goswami and Shaunak Rishi and all the other rishis. And then we come to our invocation verse. So please, if possible, you can recite with me, or not. This one we'll do lead and follow. So call and response. So you can unmute if you would like. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Now we will recite these three invocation verses. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim
Saraswati Vyasam
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devi
Devi Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Yudhirayet
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki.
Bhakti
Nashtaprayeshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki.
Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha.
कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय
वासुदेवाय
देवकी नन्दनाय च
गोविन्दाय
नन्दगोपाय
गोविन्दाय
गोविन्दाय नमो
नमो
नमः।
नमः।
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So if you want, you can unmute or you can mute now and unmute your camera if you would like to, which means turn on your camera if you would like. We can, I can see you and you can see me anyway. So today's topic is, let me share again. How Parikshit Maharaj received the age of Kali. And we will discuss this in two parts, or we'll see how long it goes. No more than two parts at most. I don't think we can finish it all today. But this is chapters 16 and 17 from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So basically, this chapter starts after. So anybody remembers what's the previous chapter? What's chapter 15 in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto?
Pandava's retirement.
That's exactly right. Pandava's retirement. So the Pandavas retire after the departure, or after Yudhishthir Maharaj learns of the departure of Lord Krishna from this planet, and when he continues his pastimes in other universes in the material creation, so he leaves this universe. Then the Pandavas also plan to retire from their varnashrama duties of of ruling the kingdom, etc. And they hand over the keys to the kingdom to their grandson Parikshit Maharaj. And it was like it had been predicted at the time of his birth that Parikshit Maharaj will be a great king, a very, very great king. And his rule will be just like the rule of Lord Ram himself. It will be no less than that. So he ruled the kingdom of, he was the emperor of the entire earth, and which is known as Bharat Varsha. And he ruled the entire planet with great with wonderful qualities, just like Ramarajya, in a very, very qualified way. And his activities have been described at various places in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the main episodes that occurred during his life is his meeting with the personality of Kali. So Kali Yuga is starting, or it had started in full force right when Lord Krishna departed from this planet. And his meeting with Kali is a very important incident. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, these two chapters, 16 and 17 of the first canto, have been devoted to that whole discussion and that whole episode of his meeting with the personality of Kali. So a lot of wonderful things to be learned from these two chapters. So it's a very nice mix of story as well as learnings. So very beautiful chapter. And again, all chapters in the Srimad Bhagavatam are very beautiful, but this has especially a wonderful mix of story and philosophy or learnings. So the chapter begins, so we are beginning at chapter 16. Chapter begins with Parikshit Maharaj's description of his ruling over the world. So he was ruling over the world as a great devotee and under the instructions of the Brahmanas. So the Brahmanas are supposed to be like the guides or the ones who provide spiritual guidance to the king, and the king rules the kingdom based on the guidance, the spiritual guidance that he gets from the Brahmanas. So he was ruling the kingdom under the able guidance of the best Brahmanas that were there, and he was completely fulfilling all the prophecies that had been foretold at his birth. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit married Iravati. Iravati is the daughter of King Uttara, who Uttara, not to be confused with Uttara, who is the mother of Parikshit Maharaj himself, but King Uttara, and he is the son of Virat, who played a major role in the Mahabharata. So Parikshit and his wife Iravati had 4 sons, and the eldest son was Janmejaya Maharaj. So very very able son, and he would later become king after the departure of Parikshit Maharaj. Then to rule the kingdom, Parikshit Maharaj had selected Kripacharya as his spiritual master, and under his guidance he was ruling the kingdom. So here Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport that even a great king, not only a great king, but a great devotee like Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Even such an able person, both from a material standpoint and from a spiritual standpoint, they also need a spiritual master, because the spiritual master guides the person when when the time is full of trouble. In the modern time also, you can understand, a doctor never treats himself. A doctor always goes to another doctor for treatment. So even though you may be a doctor, you take the shelter of another doctor when you need treatment. So that is another point that Srila Prabhupada points out with regard to Kripacharya being the spiritual master of such a wonderful devotee, Parikshit Maharaj. And under his guidance, he performed 3 Ashwamedha Yagyas. Ashwamedha Yagyas are these elaborate and very wonderful horse sacrifices that establish his undisputed supremacy over the entire world. Now, again, this is not to be confused or mistaken with a killing of a horse. These are performed by very, very able Brahmanas, and the horse, as soon as the sacrifice is over, attains a very wonderful spiritual body. And this has been described in the purports by Srila Prabhupada. And so the horse is also benefited, and the performer of the sacrifice is also benefited. So not to be confused as some kind of ritualistic activity. So, but in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya himself says that no such sacrifices are to be performed, because there are no such able Brahmanas present or available to perform such sacrifices. So in Kali Yuga, especially under the guidance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, none of such sacrifices are to be performed. The only sacrifice that Lord Chaitanya has said that must be performed profusely without any limitation 24/7 is what sacrifice?
Naam Sankirtan.
Yes.
Japa Yajna.
Japa Yagya or Nama Sankirtana. Yes, Nama Sankirtana Yagya. So that is the sacrifice, that is the recommended sacrifice for Kali Yuga. So anyway, Parikshit Maharaj was ruling the kingdom in this way. And one time, and as part of his ruling of the kingdom, Parikshit Maharaj used to go around, and all the kings used to do that. Now, these days, the kings don't do that, or the rulers don't do that. They used to put on a, what do you say? Or a garb, or a, a disguise. Yes, in a disguised way, they would go around and try to get the pulse of their kingdom. These days, the rulers are so afraid of their own life that they don't leave their, safe haven, or whatever you call them, secret service, and so on. So that was not the case in those times. And Parikshit Maharaj used to go around like this and um, try to understand what is going on in the kingdom. Anyway, at one time, Parikshit Maharaj was on his, so he was getting these as he was going around, and also uh, in a at a time when he was going around the world to conquer as part of the Ashwamedha Yagya. At various points of time, he got some sense that Kali Yuga is approaching very fast. So he wanted, or he had to do something about it. Especially one time when he was going on his chariot, he saw that Kali personified, disguised as a Shudra, he was beating a cow and a bull. So cow and a bull are very harmless animals, and one should never hurt anybody who is not causing any disturbance to you. And in any case, you should not hurt anybody, but especially for no reason, you should never retaliate. So he saw this low class person, and he could recognize that he is the personification of Kali. He was badly wounding and beating and injuring a cow and a bull. And the king immediately, Maharaj Parikshit immediately took him to task. And he raised his sword and said, I am going to kill you right now. And but then Suta Goswami describes that he did not kill him. He just had a conversation. So at that time, Shaunaka Rishi asked a question, that why did Parikshit not kill Kali? If he would have killed Kali, then Kali Yuga would not have progressed, and everything would have been great. So why did he only punish him and not kill him? Suta Goswami answers this question in detail in the coming in this chapter, and the next chapter will be there'll be a long answer. So there is no short answer to this question, but this question will be answered elaborately by Suta Goswami. He also mentioned that one very, very important thing Shaunaka Rishi also asked. Only answer, so please pay attention to this one. He asked, only answer this question, what I have asked. Why did he only punish Kali and not kill him? Please answer in a way, or only answer those portions that relate to Lord Krishna. Don't give me a political answer or give me a more material level answer. Give me an answer that is in relation to Lord Krishna. So this was the mood in which Shaunaka Rishi asked this question. So the learning from here is that these questions that are asked by the devotees, they may appear as if they are material questions, but they are only interested in hearing those topics that are in relation to Lord Krishna. The devotees specifically are not interested in hearing anything else. They are not interested in what is called as loose talk or prajalpa or just some mundane talks. They are very interested in talks that are Hari Katha, that are in relation to Lord Krishna. Shaunak Rishi also mentions that the devotees of the Lord are so interested in hearing Hari Katha, like it's as if licking the honey at the lotus feet of the Lord. The Hari Katha is so sweet for the devotees. So please tell us this answer in relationship to Hari Katha. And because it is so sweet, it's just like licking honey at the lotus feet of the Lord. He also goes ahead and mentions that we should hear Hari Katha not alone. We should always hear in the association of devotees. So when we are hearing together in a group, then it has even more benefit, even more ecstasy, even more joy. Spiritual joy comes when one is hearing in association of other devotees. And then he even goes on to say that the great devotees of the Lord, they even invite Yamaraj to come and hear. And Yamaraj, being a great devotee of the Lord, never says no. So wherever Hari Katha is going on, even Yamaraj comes and listens. And because Yamaraj is sitting there and hearing Hari Katha, and all the devotees are also sitting and hearing Hari Katha, that means those devotees can never die. Because if they will die, they have to go to Yamaraj. But Yamaraj is sitting here and hearing Hari Katha. So how can he take care of those who are dying? So these devotees, basically the point that is being made is that they even transcend death, because they invite Yamaraj also to come and sit with them. The person who is responsible for all the death and other activities, he's himself sitting here. So where is the question of death? So death is also transcended by hearing Hari Katha, because Yamaraj himself is sitting right next to them. So this is the advantage of hearing Hari Katha, especially in the association of devotees. And what better association than Yamaraj himself? So that is the point being made. So these are all the glorifications that are provided by Shaunaka Rishi in relation to that one small question as to why did he not kill Kali? Why did he only punish him? So he gave this long sort of a attribute to that question, that to answer this question in relation to Hari Katha. And he then finally mentions that people in Kali Yuga are so lazy and they have no intelligence that they pass the night in sleeping and pass the day in performing useless activities and hearing useless things. So we don't want to be like the people of Kali Yuga. We want to hear Hari Katha only. So in these few verses, specifically from verse number 5 to verse number 9 of this chapter number 16, the glories of Hari Katha are being described by Shaunaka Rishi. So now Suta Goswami's response. So Suta Goswami begins to answer the question that why did he only punish Kali and not kill him? So he rewinds. He says, okay, let me step back and give the whole context. So he again begins to say that the symptoms of Kali Yuga were beginning to manifest in the rule of Parikshit Maharaj. He could see some symptoms. And so he, being a Kshatriya, he did not want to sit idle. A Kshatriya, whenever he sees a problem, he wants to tackle it head on. He can't wait. So being a Kshatriya, he immediately set out to solve this problem. He took up his bow and arrow and his whole army, and along with his army, he went to find this how to eliminate the symptoms, or how to eliminate the root cause of Kali from his kingdom. So of course, Maharaj Parikshit is a great ruler and he can catch hold of Kali. But a question for us who are trying to become devotees of the Lord, a question for us is, where should we go look for Kali? If we have to, go find Kali and probably if punish him or kill him, where should we go? Where will we find him? Parikshit Maharaj was able to find him. How will we find? That is the question. Where is Kali residing? Where can we find? In downtown Portland, East Portland, West Portland, South Portland? Where do we go to find Kali?
Desire.
Very nice. In our desires. What else? There's not much right and wrong you can go, but where do you find Kali?
Maybe that in our thoughts,
within ourselves.
Yes, within ourselves, in our hearts, in our consciousness. Exactly. Where else? So we said in our hearts, in our desires, in our minds, consciousness. So that's all within us. We can realize that's within us. Anything else?
When you indulge in bad habits,
When you indulge in bad habits, yes, that's also us, inside us, our desires. When we give way to our desires.
wherever
When-
ignorance is there.
Okay, wherever ignorance is there.
Gambling.
Okay, gambling, somebody said, so which means
Yes.
in some gambling places, casinos, or wherever gambling is happening. Very good. Where else?
When there is law
Inter-
is out of order.
Wherever law is out of order. Okay,
Mhm.
yes,
Wherever absence of God's thinking.
very true. So all these are right answers. All these are correct answers. And we had discussed this in one of the previous classes, actually, that in the discussion of the disappearance of Lord Krishna, where all Kali will attack. What are all the targets? Like you paint a target, right? And then you shoot at the target. So what
Wherever
all are the targets that Kali has painted?
wherever there are quarrels, so
Okay. So specifically according to the Bhagavatam, it was mentioned that Kali attacks ourselves, which means our minds and hearts, our families, our communities, our cities, the state or the country, and the whole universe. So basically, the point is there is no place left where Kali is, the effect or the manifestation of Kali Yuga is not present. It's present everywhere. And all the way in it has taken root in our hearts, in our minds. So we have to be very, very diligent and very careful that Kali is always there to distract us, to make us deviate from our devotional practices. And we have to be very careful. So that is where we need to go find Kali. So anyway, that was a small aside, a small side topic, that where do we go and find Kali? But Maharaj Parikshit took his army and went to counteract the effects of Kali Yuga. And then wherever he went, he heard only the glories, because Kali Yuga was just beginning. Kali Yuga had not, several thousand years had not passed. I'll just mute everyone. Okay. So wherever he went, he heard very nice things. He continuously heard the glories of the Pandavas. He heard that what great devotees the Pandavas were, which were his grandfathers. He also heard the glories of Lord Krishna himself. And he heard how they were, the citizens of his kingdom were glorifying Maharaj Parikshit as well. That he had had the fortune of having the darshan or the vision of the Lord when he was in the womb of his mother, and the Lord came and saved him from the Brahmastra. So like that, he was hearing all good things. And he was not able to find very many places where Kali Yuga had taken foothold. And then wherever he heard these nice things, he would glorify in return all those people, reward them profusely, and glorify them and encourage them. So like this, he was going around in his kingdom. He also heard that more glories about Lord Krishna from others, and then he himself started thinking about the glories of Lord Krishna. He saw that how, or he heard, and then he started contemplating how Lord Krishna. So this is one of the point being made here, is that once a devotee of the Lord is kind of induced or catalyzed with the law, with the thoughts of Lord Krishna, it is very hard to make him stop. He cannot stop thinking about Lord Krishna. So whenever he used to hear these topics about Lord Krishna from other people as he was going around in his kingdom looking for Kali, he was himself periodically getting completely immersed in the thoughts of Krishna. And very nicely it has been described what are the kind of thoughts that he experienced. So he would remember how his grandfathers, the Pandavas, had told him about their interactions with Lord Krishna, how mercifully how the Lord had become their chariot driver. He became their gatekeeper when they were sleeping in the, in the Lakshagraha, or when there was Lord Krishna knew there was danger, he would stand outside and watch guard. He was the messenger of the Pandavas. He was the friend of the Pandavas. He was their chariot driver. He was obeying them like a servant. And then he also thought that it is not Lord Krishna who is aligned with the Pandavas. Yes, of course, Lord Krishna is aligned with the Pandavas and he was serving them. But the reason for that was that actually the Pandavas were fully aligned with Lord Krishna. This was simply a reciprocation of Lord Krishna's love to his pure devotees, such as the Pandavas. The Pandavas underwent so much suffering, but they never gave up Krishna consciousness. They never gave up their devotion to Lord Krishna. This was the Pandavas' alignment to Lord Krishna. And when the Pandavas had fully aligned themselves to Lord Krishna, as a loving reciprocation, Lord Krishna fully aligned himself with all the Pandavas. So this wonderful exchange was going on. And it is said, and it is written here in the Bhagavatam, that when he heard this, Maharaj, and when he thought this and he heard this from others, Maharaj Parikshit became overwhelmed with the devotion towards Lord Krishna. His heart was completely full of ecstasy, and he would go into a trance thinking about these topics about Lord Krishna. So one can see how even for a pure devotee like Parikshit Maharaj, how nice and how wonderful it is to hear Hari Katha, to hear the topics of the Lord, because it gives so much joy, so much pleasure, so much transcendental pleasure to the heart of the devotees. What to speak of those who are not devotees, who have not heard? The first time when they hear, they get so much pleasure and so much joy. Even those that have heard thousands of times get the joy. What to speak of those that are hearing for the first time? So these are the glories of Hari Katha. So now changing gears, now he is going to meet the personality of Kali. So we again step back. Before Parikshit Maharaj meets Kali, the personality of Kali, we shift the scene a little bit. And let me share my screen here. There's a nice picture I want to show. Okay, so there is a bull and a cow who are talking to each other. So this is what is going on. And after some time of their conversation occurs, Parikshit Maharaj will appear or will come there, and he will see what the bull and the cow are talking. So there is a bull and there is a cow, and they are standing on the bank of the Saraswati River. So the river that you see in the background is the Saraswati River. And do you notice anything special about the bull? The bull is the black one here. Anything special you notice? I don't know how clearly you can see the picture, but there is something peculiar about that picture.
He's
Standing on one leg.
Standing on one leg.
Exactly. So all of you got that part right. So we can see, even though I think at least in my screen, it is showing the other three legs, but in a faded way, or they have been sort of photoshopped or whatever may be the case, but the bull is standing on one leg. So this bull is Dharma. He is none other than Yamaraj or Dharmaraj himself. And so this bull is a personification of Dharma himself. And he is basically standing on one leg. A bull has 4 legs and Dharma has 4 legs. So what are the 4 legs of Dharma we had discussed last week? Anybody remembers? Any
The
legs?
4 Vedas? 4
Tapa.
Vedas?
No.
Tapa, Saucha, Daya, and
No.
Yes. Tapa, Saucha, Daya.
Saucha.
What is
Yeah,
it?
and
Daya,
Sat-
correct.
And-
Daya, Satyam,
Truthfulness, yes.
Saucham,
and Tapaha.
Tapa.
Yes, very nice. So these are the 4 legs of Dharma on which Dharma stands. So as you start removing each leg, the the foundation of dharma starts shaking. So in a very dharmic society, or in a very dharmic kingdom, or within a dharmic person himself, it can be, like we said, Kali Yuga attacks not just the person, but the society, the country, and the whole material existence. So these are the things that go away. And if these four things can be brought back, then dharma can be brought back. So in Kali Yuga, in the previous yugas, one by one, each leg is going away. And this bull is standing on the leg of Satyam. So Tapa, Shaucha, and Daya are all gone by the time of arrival of Kali Yuga. And only Satyam is little bit there, and very soon even that will go away in Kali Yuga. So he met, so this bull is Dharma, and the cow is Bhumi, or Dhara, or Dharini. So this is Mother Earth. And the cow was grieving, was crying as if a mother has lost her child. So she was profusely crying, and this bull, who was himself limping on one leg, asked some questions to the Mother Earth. And there are 11 questions that have been asked by Dharma to Dhara, or to Earth, to Mother Earth. So these are very, very important questions, and we will go over them one by one. So he first described the symptoms that he was seeing of the cow. He was seeing the cow as extremely sad and morose, with a dark face, and as if the cow was diseased, had some very bad disease. So basically the cow was in a completely dilapidated condition, almost about to die. And the bull, which is Dharma, asked 11 questions to the cow. So first of all, he asked, why are you so sad, so morose, so dejected, all these things. And then he gives 11 reasons. Is it because of this? Is it because of this? Is it because of this? Like that, he asks 11 questions. And what are these 11 questions? These 11 questions are nothing but the symptoms of Kali Yuga. So like this, in this manner, Dharma, or the bull, is describing 11 symptoms of Kali Yuga. All these 11 symptoms you will see exist within Kali Yuga. And that is the reason for the cow, or the Dhara, or Mother Earth, to be so sad and so morose and so depressed. So please pay careful attention to these 11 symptoms of Kali Yuga. So first thing that he asks is, are you thinking of some relative who is away at a very distant place that you cannot meet? So we can see in Kali Yuga, our relatives, we are not together. We all stay in very, very distant places, and then we feel so sad that we are so distant from them. So this is a symptom of Kali Yuga, where love between relatives, between families, takes a lower priority, and other sense gratificatory interests take higher priority. So that is one symptom of Kali Yuga. Then Dharma says, okay, if not that, then are you lamenting on my condition? Because I have lost 3 legs and I am standing only on 1 leg. Is that the cause of your lamentation? So that is another point, that in Kali Yuga, there is no tapa, there is no austerity. Who performs austerity in Kali Yuga? Everything is instant gratification. There is no austerity in Kali Yuga. If I, tell you to that, so many cases, again, if I go on a tangent, there's just no austerity in Kali Yuga. Everything needs to be instant gratification. People, if I have sent an email, oh, it has not arrived yet, it has not arrived yet. Okay, it will arrive whenever it will arrive. Why is there so much impatience and patience is a form of austerity. All kinds of things. Then there is and these are also related to the four regulative principles. Tapa or austerity is what is the regulative principle related to tapa? Anybody?
Patience.
Okay, what are the four regulative principles? First of all, anyone who knows? According to the Bhagavatam,
No
what
meat
are the
eating,
four
No
no gambling, no intoxication,
concentration.
no illicit sex.
please
And
say that
illicit
again, Sushilpa
Yeah.
Mataji.
Yeah.
Who was answering? Sarita Mataji or whoever. Can you
Yes,
say that again?
Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
What are the four regulative principles?
No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex.
Very good. So, tapaha, when you say austerity, when we say austerity, which regulative principle is this connected with?
No intoxication.
No intoxication. Very good. Yes, that's the one that it is connected with. So, not taking intoxicating substances, alcohol, tobacco use, etc. So many intoxicants are there, and not using those is a first step in austerity. For many people, it's very hard to give these up. They would rather give up connection with God or even connection with families, what to speak about God, for their attraction or for their lack of ability to perform austerity by not consuming these substances. Next is shaucham. Shaucham means cleanliness. Which regulative principle does this connect with?
Illicit connection.
Illicit.
Connection.
Illicit connections. Yes, exactly. That
Yes,
is it leads to not only uncleanliness of the body, but it leads to uncleanliness of the heart. The next is daya or mercy or
Meat
compassion.
eating.
No meat.
No meat eating. Exactly. So that is the first step in avoidance or in building up compassion for others, is to not eat any animal or killing any cow products like dairy products, totally fine, but no meat eating, no killing other animals for the sake of gratification of the tongue. And finally, satyam or truth. Which regulative principle is that connected with?
No gambling.
No gambling.
No manipulation.
No manipulation. Exactly. So that is the first step. So these four regulative principles are only the first steps. So, but they are the starting point towards building these four qualities of dharma in our personal lives. Let alone if everybody starts following those, the whole society will prosper. But at our personal level, and these will come in the subsequent part of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will see these qualities mentioned exactly to be avoided. Okay, so we talked about two symptoms of Kali Yuga. One is the loss of all these four legs of dharma, and the other is staying away from relatives. The third one is explicitly dharma is asking the cow that have unlawful meat eaters exploited you. So there is this cow killing is going on so unabatedly in Kali Yuga, and we see that simply for the gratification of the tongue, organized killing of the cows are happening, and it is happening at a unrestricted scale, at a unlimited scale. So this is a very, very sorry state of affairs in Kali Yuga. The fourth reason or the fourth symptom of Kali Yuga, as described by Dharma, is that demigods, the devatas, are bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings. Nobody is doing any kind of sacrifices to please the demigods. So, according to the Vedic Karma Kanda sections, one has to perform these sacrifices towards the devatas, the demigods. Now, of course, from Bhagavad Gita, we understand that we should not perform those and simply do Nama Sankirtana or chant the names of Krishna, hearing and chanting the names of Krishna and his pastimes, his glories. That is our principle. But for those that are less advanced, those that are not in the path of bhakti, for them, yes, they should offer these karma kanda or the karma yoga practices of offering sacrifices to the demigods. So that is meant for them. Then he is saying that, are you, Dharma asks, are you grieving? Are you lamenting because of the suffering due to famine and drought? So we see so much famine and drought in Kali Yuga. These famine and drought were unheard of in the previous yugas. It is only a symptom of Kali Yuga. And because people have become so sinful, that famine and drought have become very prevalent. Then the sixth question is that Dharma asks, are you feeling unhappy or lamenting because the women and children have been left unprotected by the men? The men are supposed to take care and protect the women and children. Of course, the children and the women, are supposed to be protected by the fathers, the husbands, and the sons. And in Kali Yuga, we see that the women have been left alone. Their protection, let alone their protection, they are being exploited. They are being used for sense gratification by the unscrupulous people in this world. So we see that so prevalent in this society. And that is another symptom of Kali Yuga. Then the seventh symptom of Kali Yuga is that the goddess of learning is being handled by the Brahmanas, who are addicted to irreligious activities, to sinful activities, and they themselves don't practice the religious practices that they preach. So these Brahmanas have become unscrupulous. They are not actually Brahmanas. They are just sense gratifiers and externally pretending to be Brahmanas. And they are the ones who have become the keepers of the knowledge, of the not only the material knowledge, of the spiritual knowledge as well. So it's like what's that saying? The fox is guarding the hen house, or something like that. So what will happen? It's going to lead to degradation of the society. And we see that even the modern day Brahmanas are supposed to be the teachers, the professors, the ones who are supposed to be sort of the wise people in the society, and how they are acting in a completely corrupt way. Sense gratification is what is driving them, not the aspects of truth or what is right, what is moral. These aspects don't drive them, and there are so many instances, so many cases. In fact, that is connected to the next point. The eighth point is Brahmanas have taken shelter of the administrative families, and actually it is supposed to be the other way around. The administrative class, the Kshatriyas, are supposed to take the shelter of the Brahmanas. If you remember Parikshit Maharaj, in the beginning we said he was ruling the kingdom under the guidance of very able and learned Brahmanas. So he was taking guidance from them. If the Brahmanas tell this is not a right thing to do, this is the right thing to do, king should follow that. Now the Brahmanas have taken shelter of the king. So the king says to the Brahmanas, you certify this to be correct. The Brahmanas have simply become a rubber stamp for the sense gratification of the kings. And we see that also happening today, especially in these times. There is so much of misinformation. The political class is telling the intelligent class what kind of statements to make. So we saw this very recently, for example, in this whole COVID situation and everything. The whole concept of what is scientifically right was so much clouded with the politics of the situation that it was so hard. It is still so hard to discern what is correct and what is wrong. Scientifically, there can be only one right thing, and in the other sciences is very black and white. If you are truthful, you should be able to say what is right, what is wrong. This is beneficial, this is good, and this is harmful. But when the political class begins to influence and say, no, you must say this, you must say that, then the intelligent class or the Brahmanas become subservient to the Kshatriyas. And then it leads to the degradation of the society. People lose trust in both the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. So that is very common, that is very prevalent, and it is happening today. The ninth reason given is the downfall of the political class, that the disorder created by the administrators. The administrators are completely corrupt and they have no moral principles, no religious principles. And they are not only that, they don't even have the education or the proper understanding. Even if they want to make a right decision or they want to do the right thing, they don't have the necessary basis to make those decisions. They just don't have that capacity. Either it has not been there in their education, their upbringing. The whole environment is such that they are perpetually confused. They don't know what is right, what is wrong, and therefore they are bewildered. And in their bewildered state, whether the bewilderment is desire, is what is that? Is voluntary, or it is imposed on them. Either way, they are making wrong decisions and they are unable to rule or to provide correct guidance to the people. So there is complete bewilderment of the administrative class of people. And finally, the 10th argument that is made is that the people do not follow the regulations. They are not leading a regulated life. They are leading a life of unrestricted sense enjoyment. So sense enjoyment is there, not only it's there, but it is there in an unrestricted way. There is absolutely no restriction. So even in the Vedas, there is provision for sense enjoyment, but in a regulated and a restricted way, so that slowly people can come from the state of higher sense enjoyment to lower sense enjoyment, and therefore go from a position of lower God consciousness to higher God consciousness. As sense enjoyment decreases, God consciousness increases. So that is the purpose of the Vedas. But in Kali Yuga, there is complete unrestricted sense enjoyment. So these are the 10 reasons given, but I said there are 11 reasons given for the lamentation of Dhara or Dharini. Dharini means the Dharti or the Mother Earth. So what is the 11th reason? And 11th reason is the most important reason why she is lamenting. So what could possibly be a far more important reason than all the ones that we have discussed so far? Any idea? The 11th reason trumps all the 10 put together.
Greed.
Krishna leaving the
Exactly. Who said Krishna leaving the planet?
Sarita.
Sarita. Wonderful. That is the exact reason. So if you remember, Mother Earth or Bhumi or Dharini was the one who initially made the plea to Lord Brahma to invite Lord Krishna to the planet. Lord Krishna had already planned to come, but she became the instrument that caused the appearance of Lord Krishna on the planet. And the bull or Dharma is saying, are you so sad and lamenting because Lord Krishna has left your body? The surface of the earth is the body, is the surface of the earth is where Lord Krishna was present. So has Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna has left, he has stopped making contact with your external body, with your surface. Is that why you are lamenting? So we will see Mother Earth or Dharani's response very soon. But this is the number one reason why she is so sad. It is said in the Bhagavatam that who was the person or who was the personality who got the most association with Lord Krishna when he was present on the planet? Any idea? Who had the maximum association of Krishna?
Gopis and their
Arjuna.
Okay, we heard gopis, we heard Arjuna. Who else? There is somebody who had more
Bhumi.
association.
Bhumi Devi.
Bhumi Devi, correct. That's the right answer. Because Lord Krishna was always walking on her, on her body, on the earth. And especially in Vrindavan, the Lord never wore any footwear. He always walked barefooted, always. So Mother Bhumi had such wonderful association with Lord Krishna. Whenever Lord Krishna used to walk on the face of the earth, barefoot, all the wonderful marks on his feet would get imprinted on the earth, and she would be in so much ecstasy in touching the feet of the Lord. So that association of the Lord has been lost, and that is why she is the most sad, and that is the reason, the number one biggest reason of her sorrow. So that is the 11th question. Dharma asks that, is it that because Lord Krishna has left the planet that you are so sad? So and we can see that is also the reason there is no presence of Lord Krishna or God in anywhere in the Kali Yuga, not in people's minds, hearts, society, city, state, country. God is completely absent from everywhere in Kali Yuga. So that's one of the biggest symptoms of Kali Yuga, is complete lack of God consciousness. So he asks Dhara, or the Mother Earth, what are the reasons of your sadness? So Mother Earth replied, Dharini replies that yes, all those reasons are correct. And you have one leg left. That reason is also correct. There is so much of fall down of administrative class and this and that. All those reasons are correct. But the number one reason I am sad is because of my separation from Lord Shri Krishna. And then as soon as the mention of Lord Krishna comes, because Dharma asked this question, that was the 11th question, that are you sad because of separation from Krishna? So again, Dharini, being such a great devotee of the Lord, the moment she was reminded of Lord Krishna, she goes into complete ecstasy. And then there are beautiful verses, 5 verses, where Dharini is describing 40 different qualities of Lord Krishna that she personally experienced when Lord Krishna was present. So we are not going to go into all the 40 qualities. It will take a long time. But she describes wonderful qualities of Lord Krishna, why she is missing all those qualities. And she says that Lord Krishna was the reservoir of all goodness and beauty, and now his transcendental pastimes and his presence has been erased from the face of the earth. And in his absence, the age of Kali has spread its influence everywhere, and therefore I am so sad and I am so sorry. So just because Lord Krishna has stopped touching Mother Dharti, that's why she is sad. So, and also she says that I care about you. I'm also sad because of you. You have lost 3 legs. I am sad for the demigods. They don't have the association of Lord Krishna. I'm sad for the sages. I'm sad for the devotees. And I am sad for all the people who are following Varnashrama. Varnashram is those people who are basically following a regulated and a principled life according to scriptures, according to the Varnas and Ashramas. So all those that are following Varnashrama. That is why she is called Mother, because she cares for all the people. Whoever cares for all the people is a mother. So that's why she is called Mother Bhumi. And then she describes the glories of the lotus feet of the Lord, how she was in constant association of the lotus feet of the Lord. She is explaining that the lotus feet of the Lord were decorated with impressions of the flag, the thunderbolt, the elephant, the lotus flower, etc. So there are all these symbols on the lotus feet of the Lord, and all these symbols would get implanted on her face, on the face of Mother Dharti, when Lord Krishna used to walk. And there is such a wonderful pastime. Let me share my screen. And we were very recently reading this in the Krishna book reading that we do on Fridays, of Akrurji. So you can see here Akrura when he enters Vrindavan. And Akrura is a great, great devotee of Lord Krishna, and he had been sent by Kamsa to go get Lord Krishna to Mathura. So he's so happy, forget the fact that Kamsa has sent him, but he's so happy that he is going to meet Lord Krishna. So he used to live in Mathura, and he's coming to Vrindavan for the first time. And as soon as he comes to Vrindavan, and here you can see two different pictures, he sees the footprints of Lord Krishna. So you can see a footprint here, some small footprints. And as soon as he sees those footprints on the face of the earth, Akrura gets completely in ecstasy, and he starts rolling in the dust. And he starts putting all that dust which had touched the feet of Lord Krishna on his body. So on the right hand side is a more sort of a little more modern painting. All these paintings, by the way, are by devotees. So they have very nicely not only made a good painting, but they have made a good painting in good consciousness. So these are very nice paintings by devotees of the Lord, and you can see Akrurji, cherishing the lotus feet or the imprints of the feet of the Lord. I just put one more picture here. When devotees go to Vrindavan, how they relish the dust of Vrindavan. Even after 5,000 years of the disappearance of Lord Krishna, the dust of Vrindavan still is considered to have the lotus imprints of the feet of the Lord. Those imprints will never go away. So these devotees, so whenever you get a chance to go to Vrindavan, there is especially a place called Raman Reti. Raman Reti is a place where the sand is very soft and very cool. Even in the bright summer, even in very intense summer, even then that sand is very cool. It doesn't get heated. You can easily walk barefooted, and devotees, roll in that sand, and in the hope that they will get one speck of sand with the imprints of Lord Krishna's feet. So very nice meditation on the dust of Vrindavan. Okay, so that's I just thought I'll put that picture there for you to relish and to plan your future Vrindavan trips. So so where were we? Yeah. So Mother Earth is describing her separation due to separation of Lord Krishna due to his departure from the face of the earth. So she says that Lord Krishna, when he was present, he completely relieved all the troubles and all the pains that we were experiencing before his appearance. And when he was present, I was so relieved by his presence. And I was enjoying every moment when he used to step on me, and I used to, the grass on the ground, which is growing from the earth or from the is like hair standing on end. Like when we see as humans something very beautiful or something very enchanting, our hair stands up. So Mother Earth said that the grass that is coming out of the earth is like my hair standing on end because of my ecstasy on coming in contact with Lord Krishna. So she keeps on, she describes like this, and she says, I used to continuously be immersed in the dust of the feet of the Lord, and like this. So at that point, when she's having this conversation with Dharma, then Parikshit Maharaj comes. So Parikshit Maharaj arrives, and then he sees this Shudra or this Kali beating these two the bull and the cow. So that brings to an end the 16th chapter, and then the conversation between Kali and Parikshit Maharaj will begin. So I'm thinking it's 7:07. We will continue that conversation in the next week, because if I start that, then that will be sort of, I'm thinking that it's better to cover that whole thing in one session. So I'll stop here, and let's see if there's any discussion or questions, comments, corrections, anything that you liked or from today's discussion, or anything you want to share. Anyone?
Prabhuji, I like the discussion with Kali. Parikshit's discussion with Kali, because that is the starting point for us also to know why all these things are starting.
Yes.
The root cause for all the bad things that are all happening. So far we don't know, but this is the eye opener for us.
Yes, and there will be, you bring up a very good point, the root cause. And in the next session, we will be covering in detail what is the root cause of all the bad effects of Kali. And whatever suffering that people are undergoing, what is the root cause of that suffering? And how do various people perceive or attribute that root cause to? There are many people who attribute, for example, the root cause to be someone else. When there is success, when you are successful, or you gain a victory, or you win something, who is the cause in that case usually? What do you say?
Himself or herself.
Myself. Yeah, I am the
Yeah,
cause.
myself.
I won this, or I earned this, or it's the cause is me. But when the success doesn't come, when failure happens, then what do we say usually? Then
Look
who's
for
the cause?
blaming someone
We
else.
blame others.
Someone else.
Blaming game starts.
Blaming who?
Blaming game starts from then onwards.
Blaming game starts. Yes. So basically it is someone else. Exactly. So when something good happens, then we are the cause. And when something bad happens, someone else is the cause. So in the Kali Yuga, there is suffering. Generally, there is suffering. Suffering is much more than happiness. We can see it in our lives. And some of us may be very fortunate that the suffering is very less compared to the pleasures. But for most people, the suffering is more and pleasure is very little. And then we have to find the root cause. What is the cause? And of course, and we said, the right answer is always someone else, because it is suffering. And there are so many causes that are described. Even one of the causes that is described as Lord Krishna himself is the cause. He is the one. If he would have been more merciful, or if he had not even existed, he is the one who is punishing us, like a very what you call a bad cop, or a strict father, or a demoniac father like Hiranyakashipu. He is punishing us. So people even don't leave God in blaming that God is the cause of all my suffering. And there
We
are
blame the God's design as something faulty.
Yeah, exactly, something faulty in the God's design. What did I do? What have I done to receive so much suffering? And God's design is faulty, and he is making me suffer for no reason. So that is one of the thinking. Another thinking is that other people, not God, but other people are to blame. They are just very sinful people, and they are causing distress to me. There is another understanding, the Advaita understanding, which says my mind is the cause. Okay, I am just perceiving the suffering. There is actually no suffering. The mind is making me feel as if there is suffering. So it's more like a mind trick or something like that. They begin working on their mind to to somehow imagine that actually there is no suffering. The suffering is an illusion. So why am I getting so troubled by something illusory? Like, you see in a movie, there is a ghost, but actually there is no ghost, but people are afraid. In a movie theater, the ghost is in the movie, is in the camera or whatever is in the screen, but people are getting afraid for real. So it's like that. It's all in the mind. There is no real ghost or there is no real suffering. It's all a play of the mind. So that is another reason people give, that could be the reason. Let me ask you a question. What is the Vaishnava understanding of who is the cause, or what is the cause of our suffering?
Vaishnava understanding is surrender everything to God.
Okay, but the question is, what is the cause of the suffering?
Our own past karma.
Our own past karma.
Karmas, yeah.
Our own past karmas.
Karma.
Yes, very good. And there is another aspect to it. Yes. So they take the blame on themselves that we must have done something in the past, even though it may not be really the cause. Maybe the cause is actually because somebody else is being sinful. Fine. But they take it as their own responsibility. But there is a twist to it. A very important twist.
When a pure devotee thinks
It's
that the
depending
suffering
on
is to get closer
It's
to
Krishna's.
Krishna.
One at a time. One at a
Mercy.
time. Hold on.
Sorry.
Yes. Sushilpa Mataji, why don't you go first, and then Renuka Mataji?
I mean, a pure devotee at a higher level thinks that all the suffering could be a mercy of Krishna to bring, remove all the past karmas and bring the devotee closer to Krishna.
Okay. Renuka Mataji?
Everything is Krishna's will. According to his will, things are happening. I will accept it as he gives us a gift.
Okay. Any other devotee wants to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Maybe I did lot of karmas, but by His mercy, I'm getting only a very small portion of whatever I did.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else? So yes, what has been said is exactly right. The aspect that the devotee or a pure devotee or a Vaishnava thinks is that, first of all, not only I am the cause for my suffering, but this suffering should actually have been more. But the Lord is merciful and he is giving me only a small token of suffering to make me, and the second part is to make me reminded, or to remind me that this material world is so problematic, and this suffering is given enough to me to make me realize that I should actually go towards Krishna, to make me more surrendered to Krishna, to make me perform bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness more seriously. So that once we understand that this material world is full of suffering, there is no point in solving the suffering. The solution, the real solution, is Krishna bhakti. And when we submit to Krishna, then all our problems at the material level will be solved. So to bring the devotees closer to Krishna, and they also think that Krishna has given me the strength to deal with this suffering. I don't need any other material solution or material tool or anything else to depend on. My sole dependence is on Krishna. Krishna has definitely given me all the strength, all the tools needed to deal with these problems. Let me just completely surrender to Krishna, and that is the real solution to all my suffering. So this is how a Vaishnava thinks, and makes very quick progress towards Krishna. So yeah, so that was, I don't know how we started this discussion. I think it was coming from what is the cause of our suffering, the root cause, and we will discuss this topic in more detail in the next week as well, because this is a very important part of the conversation that occurs between Parikshit Maharaj and Dharmaraj. As a result of this conversation only, Parikshit Maharaj recognizes, oh, you are just a bull, but you are talking such wonderful philosophy. You cannot be the bull. And not only you cannot be the bull, you can only be Dharma himself, because only he can talk with such authority and such clarity. So that's how he recognizes that this bull is none other than Dharma himself. So we will see that wonderful conversation happening in the next session. Okay, anything else? Anything you liked or noticed in those 11 symptoms or qualities of Kali Yuga? Anything resonated with any of you?
All are there, Prabhuji.
Yes, all are there. True. Very true. Yeah. The thing that struck me was that the Brahman class has taken shelter of the administrative class, whereas it should have been the other way around. Everything is so politicized that there is absolutely no clarity as to what is right, what is wrong. Who is supposed to provide the guidance of what is right, what is wrong? The Shastras are supposed to provide the guidance. And who are the keepers of the Shastras? The Brahmanas are the keepers of the Shastras. They are the ones who are supposed to interpret the Shastra and tell us what is right, what is wrong. Now, if they are themselves corrupt and they are serving a political purpose or a purpose of sense gratification, then where do we have left to go to get any kind of material knowledge in terms of what is right, what is wrong? And in today's society, who are the keepers of knowledge? Whoever you consider the keepers of knowledge to be, they have become so untrustworthy. Whether in today's times you can call as the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is the keeper of knowledge. They are supposed to be the ones who should tell us what is right, what is wrong, what is good to do, what is good to avoid. But there is so much distrust in these sort of Brahminical organizations that are supposed to guide the society, that there's no guidance left as to what to do, just from a modern perspective. And of course, from a Shastric guidance perspective, anyway, it has gone long back. Anything else? Okay. If not, then we can end here. I want to make one announcement. So I'm thinking of holding now a lot of you, we had announced that we have the Japa book available, a very nice book. A lot of people had asked me questions about Japa, and we had that discussion at some time on that book by Bhurijan Prabhu called Japa, and a very, very wonderful book. And it has helped me personally a lot. And a lot of devotees expressed interest in obtaining that. A lot of you obtained that as well. We got a shipment from India. I arranged that with some devotee because here it was not available in the US. So a lot of you went ahead and obtained it. So on those lines, I started thinking maybe we should organize a Japa workshop. So where we could, do some discussion on how to improve the quality of our Japa, and how to put more focus on Japa, what to think while doing Japa. Just so many questions are there around Japa. And maybe I was thinking a half-day workshop we could do. So I'm planning to organize that maybe on one of the Saturdays. That would be a face-to-face in Portland. So I was thinking we'll do it in a park or something where we can, be socially distanced and yet be in a group. And the format I was thinking to have some discussion and then do some Japa, where we will apply what we discussed and practically, apply it during our Japa, then do some more discussion and then some more Japa, like this. So about like a half-day session like this, we were thinking of organizing. Do any of you have any feedback or any ideas, thoughts? Is that something we should do, or we should avoid doing?
Prabhuji, that is a great idea, Prabhuji. In fact, when I met you today,
I was just, planning to suggest if we could do something, some bhakti practice in a park. And I also volunteer. I want to volunteer with you if I can, organize this for the group, Prabhuji. So we just want to thank you for taking this initiative. I think it'll be very wonderful.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I'll be happy to take your help.
Prabhuji, why in park? Why not we have it in our temple itself so that we also could visit the temple? Indoors.
Temple, there are still is operating under COVID. It would have been best to do it at the temple, absolutely, but it is still operating under COVID restrictions, and we can only visit the temple on when it is open on weekends, on Sundays, and a person cannot be in the temple room for more than 10 minutes. And there are those rules. They have to follow the rules of the county and the local Oregon state government as a place of worship. So doing it inside the temple would be great in a different time. I don't think it will be practical to do it with all the restrictions in place. Once those restrictions are lifted, yes, all activities, temple is the place. It's our home base, as we call it. That's our center. Downtown for Krishna consciousness is the temple. All activities happen in downtown. So yeah, I think I'm happy to talk to our temple management, but I'm pretty sure the response will be that it may not be possible to do it till the restrictions are lifted. Even the big festivals and all, where there is so much enthusiasm, like Gaur Purnima was recently celebrated, the birthday of Lord Chaitanya. We had a discussion on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a couple of weeks back on Gaur Purnima day, or the day before Gaur Purnima. Even those wonderful festivals and celebrations are being done in a slightly low profile and muted way. So yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I don't know the limitations. Thank you.
We'll have to do it in an open space where there is more flow of air and all that. Any other ideas, thoughts, comments on the Japa workshop?
Prabhuji, will you be recording it?
Yes,
So
yes, we will be
people
recording it. It won't be
Okay.
like online, like Zoom kind of thing, because it will be
Yes.
outside and there won't be any connectivity. But I will record it on my phone
So
or something, and then
for
upload
people like us outside, yeah, we can at least hear and
watch
see.
it offline later
Yeah.
after I upload. Yeah,
Okay.
I plan to record it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Then Wi-Fi connectivity in the park, or maybe an issue. And then there'll always be, I can't hear you. Can you, all kinds of things are, technical problems. We'll be more busy solving technical problems than focusing on japa.
Yeah, but you really miss.
We'll miss the,
Medha Mataji and many other devotees.
many devotees who are outside, but yeah. Okay.
Then Prabhuji, why can't we do it virtual, just like we do like on the Zoom, so many devotees can take advantage of it?
That's another possibility. We could do it virtually, but I was thinking we could do it
because with little kids, sometimes if it's half a day, it'll be hard to manage kids, and with restrooms and with all those limitations with kids, it can be a little difficult.
That's true. That's also true. Okay, point noted.
That's a very good point. So maybe we can do the instruction, that part online, and then meeting.
That's a good idea, I feel.
Okay, let's think more about it.
Prabhuji, I wanted to talk to you offline regarding this, but I don't mind sharing it, proposing this to the group here. So I had a thought about a backyard, Prabhuji, that would be that I would be able to provide, ask, and it would have space for all of us. If that is I mean, it will be a house of a backyard. That's a somewhat a reasonably big backyard. If something to keep in mind, Prabhuji, and there'll be all that facility of bathrooms and all those things.
Somebody should be ready to open up their house. Should be ready to open up their house for this.
Prabhuji, I have one such option, Prabhuji.
Okay.
I have one option to suggest to you later, Prabhuji. I can talk to you offline.
Sure. Sounds good. Sure. So could mitigate the problem of bathroom and all.
And we can do kirtan as well.
And we can do some kirtan as well.
We have been missing so much. It can be done in person so nicely.
Okay, so that's all good suggestions. If nothing else, then we'll take leave for today. And tomorrow we have Bhagavad Gita class. We have a special session, a Q&A session, and a very, very wonderful personality will be joining us. He is His Holiness Romapad Swami Maharaj, and he is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He's a very, very senior person within ISKCON. He has spent the last 50 years or more of his life in spreading the message of Lord Krishna. He has taken to the renounced order of life. He's a sannyasi, and he simply keeps traveling around the world, spreading the message of Lord Krishna. So in the previous batch, when he used to come to Portland, he participated, or he came for a Q&A or a general session like that. And he liked it very much, and the participants liked it very much. So this time on Zoom, it's a little bit easier from that perspective. He doesn't have to physically be here, but he has kindly agreed to give us his time. And so tomorrow we'll have a very, very wonderful session. And you all are all welcome to come to interact with him, to ask him questions, and not only from Bhagavad Gita, but any spiritual topics. You can ask him about his life or his experiences, and he has interacted with thousands of people over the last 50 years and inspired countless number of people into Krishna Bhakti. So you can really connect with him and see what a from his standpoint, what is Krishna Bhakti, and what are his experiences and some of his teachings, or his his perspective on things. So a very nice opportunity to not to be missed. So please join tomorrow for the Bhagavad Gita class, 4 to 6 p.m. at the usual time. But we won't be doing our discussion on
Regular
Bhagavad
class.
Gita, but we will be doing this Q&A session. So please join for that. And we are almost the end of Bhagavad Gita. Just last few verses in 18th chapter are remaining, which we will cover in the following Sunday. So that will be on 18th April. And if you have any questions that you want to send ahead of time, please feel free to send it to my wife over WhatsApp or email, or put it in that question answer form that you have, the link, one way or the other. And the questions that you send beforehand, we will be sure to get to those. And otherwise, you are welcome to ask the questions on, live as well.
Keep the video on tomorrow.
And please keep the video on tomorrow. I'm sure he would like to see all of you and like that. So if possible, try to find a nice place, comb your hair, put on a nice jacket or whatever. Sometimes I'm like, not in my best appearance when I'm turn my camera off. So, just some things to keep in mind. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you all hopefully tomorrow. If not, then in the next future class. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Prabhuji,
Thank you.
Mataji.